Welcome, everyone. My name's Mark. I'm the creator of Teach Me PCB and co-facilitator of this year's course, along with Jesse Robinson. And we're joined today by one of the course all-stars, Elliot. How you doing, man?
Hey, good evening.
Good evening. Nice to see you again.
Indeed.
We do have a couple other people joining us. The co-facilitator, Jesse Robinson. How you doing, Jess? Oh, he's still working on his audio there. And then who is Camper LPB? Do we know his real name, Elliot, by any chance?
It's Camper.
It's Camper? Okay. Camper works. So Jesse's still working on his audio there, but I'm sure he'll get that figured out. He's got a brand new headset after knocking. There, we got you, buddy.
Okay. I have to use my camera's microphone again. I don't know what the deal is. I imagine this red light means something.
Stop?
Bad.
So, how's everybody this evening?
Okay.
That good, huh?
Yeah.
Hey, there's so much to get through tonight. We've got the Veritasium video, which was fascinating. We've got layout coming up, part shortages. Where do you guys want to start?
I don't know. I guess we can start with the video so we can cut through it quick.
No, we're not cutting through that quick, Jesse. But yeah, we can start with the video. Okay, so Veritasium had a video where he claims that in 1 meter over C, so the units come out to seconds, so like nanoseconds, a light bulb's gonna light up when you connect a battery to like a light year long wire or whatever it was, light second long wire. And for some reason, people have a problem with that.
I think that was by design.
What's it? Yeah, I think that was. I think he's already out in the desert stringing up wires, and I don't think it's going to work out well for him. But what do you guys want to say about that?
So originally, when I watched that video, what I thought he was trying to get at was what turns on the light in that time period is the EM wave that goes from the source to the load through free space, which would not be very much energy at all. I think maybe it has to do with something to do with the coupling of the wire, because one of his sources that he has linked mentioned something that the wire geometry makes a difference. Like they said, like if these are like wires like this is how I think it'll work. If they're, arced, it would be something different. So I wonder if it's something to do with the coupling of the wires, the long length of the wire, because he has them like this and then back in on themselves. So I wonder if it's coupling across there and it's not just like the free field energy.
Elliot, how about you, sir?
I think he was trying to make the point that the wires didn't need to be next to each other, but I'm also wondering if there's a practical need to understand that versus like connecting wires together and using the wrong, like it's water flowing through a tube analogy. Like how applicable is this to the way we should be thinking? Yeah.
I would actually argue incredibly applicable to what you should be thinking for PCB layout. But it depends on how deep you guys are ready to dive into the underlying physics models. Because I can go far afield on this.
I'm no physician, so you're on your own.
So let's see. The wire we had a comment from Camper Jab. I would like to share that, but it is in the private chat. So Camper Jab, if you make public comments. Like if you go to YouTube, because I know you're having trouble joining the live stream right now, but if you make comments on YouTube, I can actually share them like this. So Camper says the wire wings are supposed to form a transmission line and couple. Not sure what the magnitude of the displacement current would be relative to steady state current. Gotcha. And
so I was just going to say, I think the study, which I can't find which one of these it is, said that it would reach half voltage immediately, and then after the year it would reach the other half, and then they made some other assumptions and stuff. So I don't know if that's supposed to be like the coupling voltage is supposed to be that much, but you're not going to get half voltage just from the antenna effect by itself.
So
from the battery to the light.
Intuition tells me that he's not going to get that light bulb to light up. He might get an LED. He would certainly get a galvanometer response, but lighting up a light bulb from a 12-volt battery with 1 meter separation. I mean, I have yet to sit down and do the practical math. I mean, the theoretical is one thing, but practical is another. I just simply don't see it happening from a 12-volt battery, appreciably lighting up a bulb in 1/c seconds. That's me.
So is he going to conduct an experiment? I might have missed that part.
Yeah, he said, if people give him enough grief, he's willing to commit some resources to going and stringing up some wires in the desert. My guess is he's already there, or he needs to be.
Yeah, I think the reality when it's not a superconductor may be a little different.
Well, see, I actually have a problem with this working with a wire with no resistance. That's bugging me. Okay, so let me throw some things at you, but we don't have to go down these roads if you guys don't want to. What do you remember about Gauss's law, if anything? No? Okay, that's cool. What do you know about Faraday cages?
Oh, it's unfortunate when you're trying to talk on your cell phone.
Yeah. Shielding from electric fields.
Yeah. So if you look at a conductor, right? If you have a watertight conductor, you would expect that there is no net charge on the interior of that thing. You would expect that any charge, if there is any excess charge, it's going to all get pushed to the exterior. Do you remember that from physics class at all?
Maybe a little.
Okay, so basically the basic idea is that like charges repel. So if you have any amount of charge, they're going to repel to get as far away from each other as possible. And that is going to put all of the charges on the surface of the conductor, all of the unbalanced charge, right? If you do have, like if you have a solid conductor, like a big metal sphere, there's going to be positive nuclei in the middle. There's going to be negative electrons that attract to it. Those things are all going to balance out. I'm talking about if you have more electrons than protons. Those are the ones that are going to get pushed to the surface because that allows them to move as far away from the other charges as possible. Kind of cool or not kind of cool?
Keep going.
Okay, so my next question is, a wire is a closed surface, a watertight surface. So where is the charge there? Where is the charge in that conductor?
So, I mean, he had mentioned it. You're saying to be on the outside of the conductor.
Yeah, it's the
And
surface charge.
Yep.
So MTJ, kind of skin effect, but this is just for even regular wires. If you've got wires, the charge that has to be doing anything, and I want to start drawing some pictures, I think, has to be on the outside of the wire, the exterior of the wire. Those are the charges that are interacting with the electric field. And again, if we're going too deep into things that you guys don't want to, we don't have to. I geek out on this stuff, but it has been about 2014 was the last year I taught it. So it's not exactly fresh. So if you've got a conductor, and it's got charges on it, let's look at a couple concentric rings of charge. So we just assumed that these things are all evenly spaced out along the surface. So if we've got two, am I on screen? Yeah, I am on screen. So if we've got two concentric rings of charge, and we would have infinite number, right? So the charges are on the exterior. They're all evenly spaced. What would be the net charge right down the middle of these three things? Well, if you've got equal charges spaced all the way around, right there in the middle, it'd be 0. You'd have no charge. Is that kind of cool or not kind of cool?
Yeah.
Okay, so next, for these exterior charges to motivate charges in the middle here, there has to be a gradient from one to the next.
Mm-hmm.
There has to really be some amount of resistance in this thing for charges to move. So from one spot to the next and one spot to the next, there have to be more charges here than there are over here as you move along the wire. I hear the silence that I heard when I taught physics so many years ago.
I'm trying to think about, like, if we were talking steady state, on the other end of the wire, you're starting to build up charge, but we're talking while things are still in motion.
Well, this is steady state. This is not equilibrium where things are 0, but this has to be the condition for current to flow in a wire.
Mm-hmm.
The surface charge has to be, it is going to be on the surface, because on the interior, everything's going to be balanced out. You've got to have more charges at the, at one end of the wire than you do at the other as you move along the wire.
Yes, and what I'm saying is at the load, which does have a resistance, that's where you're going to have your other charge. You're saying here you don't have it along the wire. So you're saying, like, in the case where it's like, what's causing it to move if your charge, if you don't have the charge built up yet? Like, if you don't,
Okay.
if the charges aren't at the end, what is causing them to move? Because there's no resistance in the wire, so there's no voltage difference, no potential.
Yeah, so let's do a battery. How do I want to draw this? I guess I'll draw it like he did. This direction. I always hate silence. So there's our battery. Here's our wire. So with this surface charge theory, we've got a bunch of negative charges there, positive charges there. Oh, I'm off screen. Sorry about that. So as we go around, you have decreasing amounts of charge. And I don't know exactly how I'm going to illustrate that, but I'm going to try. And same thing over here. So you get in the middle over there and you've got a balance. So all along here, there's a gradient. We haven't added a load yet, by the way. All along here, there's a gradient. Oh, we lost Jesse. He's mad at us. Jesse, come
Sorry,
back.
Gotta do a baby
I know,
thing quick.
man. It's no problem, man. So one of the things that he's saying is you've got this surface charge phenomenon where we don't need to give the charges initially anyway. We don't have to give the charges in the wire any of this energy, any of this momentum. All we have to do is move the surface charges ever so slightly along these wires, right? Really, we know that's the electrons moving. So what we're seeing would be charges coming into the battery here, charges leaving the battery here, different charges. They never go through unless there's some quantum tunneling effects. But these things give energy, and then it goes and it goes and it goes and it knocks. And those surface charges then interact with the interior charges and give them momentum. And I hear silence. So let's take a comment while Elliot mulls that over. It's a lot to take in. You've never probably heard this theory before.
All right, I'm back.
Is there a zero resistance outside superconductivity? I would guess rather than zero resistance, you would want milliohms per light second or something to keep the I squared R losses reasonable. There is no zero resistance. Even superconductivity isn't perfect. It's close, but once you get these charges, if there is no gradient, there's no current. If there is no gradient, you've stored as much charge as you can in the wire. It's like a capacitor now, and it's done. But there's no current if there's no resistance, because the charges will just equalize over the entire conductor. Now, Elliot's been quiet. Jesse's very quiet. And I want to be very clear. You guys have probably never heard of this theory before. Most people haven't. It's not taught. Most people think of resistance as, God, what's it called? The Druid Drudge. I forget. Basically, the idea is that you've got all these electrons in the wire and they're bouncing and moving around and they bump into each other and one bumps into the other, which bumps into the other. And that's what's pushing things through the wire, right?
Like a Newton's cradle, like the little thing with the marbles.
Like a Newton's cradle. That's what most people understand what's going on inside a wire to be. But these things are jumbled. They're going all over the place. It's random motion. If you want to have some fun tonight, go get an old toilet paper tube and put a piece of tissue paper on the end and then fill it with sand and start hitting the other end of the sand with a hammer. You'll never break that tissue paper on the other side, because all of that force, it just gets randomized. It gets turned into heat and pushed to the side. You need something to give momentum back to those interior electrons to keep them moving through the wire. And that something is the surface charge. So the surface charge interacts with the electromagnetic field as these things, the second we hook this up, these electrons start moving, but they don't have to move far. There's many of them.
Mm-hmm. They just jump into the next spot, and that's why you have electrons one way and holes the other way.
Yeah. So what I guess what Veritasium is saying, and again, we haven't put a load in yet, and I'm tempted not to, is that you've got these field lines going from positive to negative. Oh, my art skills. And if you put your wire much, much, much closer, then, oh, how did we do lights? I guess that's my light. Then that electric field is going to interact with these charges much sooner on. And
so are you saying because of the proximity of that battery and the light bulb, it doesn't matter so much how long the wires are going away? It's the relationship between just those two things?
yes,
That's what his video is kind of saying.
Okay.
that is the theory that's backing up his claim. The surface charge idea. Which
And do we get to ignore resistance for that? Because we always hear the term of like current flowing, which implies something's moving along through your wire.
yes. That
But we
is
know
the,
it's not like the electron that comes out of the end of the battery eventually, like it doesn't reach the light bulb in whatever the
Never.
speed of light. It's not that electron. It's
the
something
electron
else.
that leaves the battery will never reach that light bulb in its lifetime. It just won't happen.
Because they move very slow in relation to the actual, like, overall
yeah.
current, and because it's just
They
them
move-
jumping in line and pushing. Well, we're using those loaded terms again, but would you say it's the drift speed, which was, I don't remember what you had said.
The drift velocity, it's on the order of like a centimeter a day. It's really slow. 10 to the minus 5th meters per second, something like that.
Well, I say good luck to him.
So the issue that you have is that this stuff is so... Okay, so the speed of light is incredibly fast, right? That's what's happening. Once he establishes that electric field, the news that the electric field exists starts spreading out in all directions at the speed of light, c meters per second. Since he's traveling 1 meter, it's 1 meter per 1 meter over c, and that's your time. 10 to the minus 9, a nanosecond. All right. How the heck are you going to string enough wire out in the desert that you're going to get an appreciable time difference between when you connect that thing and when the light lights up, right? A nanosecond versus maybe a millisecond. Okay, but a millisecond of wire is still incredibly long. The resistance is going to be huge. I just don't see a 12-volt light bulb ever making it.
I tend to
Myself.
agree with you.
You can come in. Thanks. Thank you. All right. Now that I've really just killed everybody's...
So does that... Trying to think about this in terms of... So I was kind of preoccupied when you were drawing your circuit before, and about...
That's okay.
You think the resistance, the lack of resistance, you think you can't get the potential, so nothing's going to move, was your point of it?
Well,
because you're not going to get potential. What's going to make the charges move? Because there's no potential change across the wire because it's resistance free.
if it's resistance free, I don't see how you're going to get current. In his theory. of surface charge that I believe that he's using to describe this.
Yeah.
And
so my EM understanding is like the EM was, the hardest part of the degree, but I don't know. It's hard to think of things when they happen at that speed, because it's like if you're ignoring that speed, it doesn't, and you have the wires hooked up, even if if there's no resistance, and you've had enough time to stabilize, you're going to get the charge from one that'll get to your load on one side, and the charge from the other, the other charge will be on the load on the other side, and there's your resistance, and there's your current flow because the difference. But before any of that is set up, because none of your charges have made it yet, it's hard to think of what's happening in that realm, I guess. The dynamic light speed nature of it.
well, it's so far outside of our everyday experience, our minds just aren't equipped to think about it. You take people like Maxwell and Einstein and Heaviside, right? They devoted their entire lives to subjects that we try to teach people in a 60-minute lecture session. Every lecture, it's some new revelation. I think it's impossible for people to get it in a single setting. Sometimes it takes weeks. Some concepts take years to develop.
And I don't remember ever kind of digging into this level of transient nature. And we talked about fields from charges. Like I always joke that our EM class was like, find the fields from this Christmas tree by integrating this weird shape of a Christmas tree. It's always like, here's a weird shape, integrate across it to get the field from it. And it's like setting up the math problem was 90% of the work, trying to figure out how to set it up.
Yeah. Transient field isn't taught often. It's steady state. You don't look at the transients. Chester, come here. The other thing that's never taught that I think's a shame, like remember that one cool antenna animation I made that I love that I never figured out how to show? Excuse me. We talk about near field and far field, right? Reactive field and then the antenna effects. We never talk what happens in the transition. And that's the most fascinating part, where you have those field lines breaking away and all that cool stuff. So we've got another comment. Are the wires not already charged by the battery since the positive terminal is connected prior to the switch being connected? Yes, they are. So if they're at the same potential, there's really not a whole lot of reason for a current to be established so that you would get magnetic fields. With a non-resistive load, under that theory, the surface charge theory, I think you need a resistance for current to be established. I would have to go back and look at that theory and see how they resolve it with load. But I don't think I've ever seen that theory in a resistance-free wire. So
And if you had a resistance-free wire and you connected two ends of a battery, would that not be equivalent to just bending the battery into a donut?
yeah, really. So my wife brought me a chicken pot pie that was heated in a volcano. And my kitty cat decided he needs a piece. Good luck with that, cat. Let me know how it works out for you.
So you guys want to change subjects?
I'd be happy to, man. I
had one thing I wanted to share that is directly useful for layout this week, if you don't mind.
I know. Oh, So what I'm doing is useless. Fine, Elliot. Fine.
I mean, we got a half an hour down. We're doing good. But
Oh wow, time flies. Yeah,
there's
man.
something I thought of earlier that I thought would be pretty helpful. We talked about it in Discord for like 2 seconds, but
Let me solo you. What do you got?
let me push the buttons.
Why is that not? Oh, we got to add you to stream. Okay, there we go.
Okay, you guys got my screen here.
We
So
got it.
there's a plugin that if you're using KiCad, KiCad, whatever CAD, you guys may be interested in. I'm going to see if I can demonstrate it. But it is called Replica Layout. This actually came in a bundle of like 6 things. So starting from scratch, bringing my components in. What you were talking about a little earlier, setting the components apart by which hierarchical sheet they're on. It already does for you, which is awesome.
Nice.
But this plugin can save a little bit of a headache too. So out of the box, the software doesn't do. Let me turn some of these off here. It doesn't easily let you lay it out one time and then apply that layout to the other. So that's exactly what this plugin is for. So let me just arrange a couple things and then show you guys what it does. And then at least you'll have something to Google if you want to repeat it. Or I might fail and there'll be nothing to show for it. But let's just put some things, whoops, wherever they go. Who knows? Who knows if this is a good layout? But it'll arrange components and it'll also keep traces. So if you actually wanted to go as far as like connecting some things up, you can do that. You'll notice there's going to be not a glitch, but just an unfortunate thing happen. So right here, I've got one of my sheets arranged. Say that's how I want it, and I have 7 more identical ones. The plugin, in order to use it, you have to select one of the items on the sheet. You can't select multiples. You can't select none. You have to start with one of them selected. Replicate layout, and it will automatically select all of the other copies of the sheet that are using the same. And if everything works well, we should see now all of these have just been rearranged, and they match.
Okay, that's nice.
So it's not out of the box, but I would highly recommend getting it. And I did say there was one thing that wouldn't work. For whatever reason, traces that extend outside of, I'm going to guess, the bounding box of all the components, they aren't picked up and included. So this trace here that went on the outside is missing from all of them. But super useful. And let me see if I can find the URL for that. But
that would be great. I'd be happy to share it.
Yeah, let's see.
Another one you might want to look into as you get to the ordering components and populating your board is I think it's called Interactive Bomb. If you don't have that one already.
I don't have that one.
That one's very good. It lets you let's see if I don't know if I have an Interactive Bomb one, but it lets you kind of get like a placement view, and you can like highlight and let's see. Let me export a. Aha. Here I can. Ooh.
That reminded me of one thing that this does that's similar but not really. It's not a bomb, but if you have 2 screens and you have the well, either one, if you have your schematic open and you select a component, it'll highlight it in your PCB. And same thing goes if you select an item in your PCB, it will take you straight there in the schematic.
That's
So,
cool.
I didn't realize that
Mhm.
until I saw it on my second screen going all crazy. Handy dandy.
That is, especially if you want to like, I always start by placing components kind of functionally where they are. So like, for your USB there, I'd put that diode up there, and then I start, before I do my traces, I kind of put things functionally, which, and like Altium, I think would be kind of like you can make rooms, and this kind of
Mhm.
reminded me of rooms when it groups by sheet.
Yeah, I'll show you another example of where that's super useful just because it's fresh in my mind. This other project I'm working on has a bunch of, let's not worry about whatever bad thing that said, has a bunch of components that are not really, okay, here, this is the way the schematic is drawn. So doesn't really indicate like what these need to be associated with, but I know I've got like 6 of the same and some of the others. It's nice to, when you have a jumble of like, actually, even better example, not here, but here. So in this single sheet, there's like 8 of the same exact capacitors, and you kind of want to keep this arrangement right on how these, the order and the way these are connected. But in general, it's just a bunch of rat lines going everywhere. So being able to like select one and arrange and make sure you get like even the reference numbers, like this is R1 and C1, that's great. But here we get to R9 and C11. So keeping them grouped together, it's really nice to have these open on 2 screens and kind of keep track. So
Why did you
anyways,
do your ref des that way?
I actually duplicated exactly what I got from the IPC.
Interesting. Okay.
It seemed like the easiest way to reduce mistakes. I manually, so kind of shot myself in the foot here. There are hierarchical coal sheets, but I wasn't able to use them because I wanted to maintain the same designations. So I actually had to manually annotate every single one of these to maintain it that way.
To capture it.
But hopefully that doesn't introduce more problems than it solves. We'll see.
Hey, Jesse, before I forget, can we share your schematic as a checkpoint? Would you mind?
Yeah, I think I've shared it a couple times, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, give me a link to where and or which one you're comfortable with, and I'll put it up in the course files.
Okay.
So
it has different values in yours, so that'll bring up questions.
Oh, great. Fine, Jesse. Fine.
I won't post this, or at least we won't put it there, but if anybody wants to steal my design, it actually all works. So
let's just
all the problems I had were self-inflicted. I drew it right.
Okay. Well, I mean, we can share yours too then if you want, Elliot. That's fine.
Your pull-ups and pull-downs and everything are all populated on there and it works now?
It all works. The main problem was I didn't understand my encoder. So this should be good if you swap and use the footprint that we have that's the official one, or omit those parts and use the kind of encoder I have, that weird incremental one. But yeah, I've got it built up and it works. It's less components. It's much simpler. So no serial, no I squared C. It's just basically NeoPixels and buttons. But I'd be happy to share if anyone wants a simple one.
Okay.
It works.
Sure. I mean, if we have a known good schematic, I'm all for sharing. So yeah, shoot me some links in Discord and I'll make them both available to people to choose from.
And I even have firmware that sort of works. It's not pretty, but if you want to skip the steps and just make something, you're welcome to it.
Absolutely, man. No, thank you so much. All right. So next up, part shortages. People are having trouble with the 595. But Jesse has solutions for you.
Yeah, I did find like an I2C and the SPY device that you can use. If people still want to stick with those. The original one that we chose, we just did a quick choice, and it turns out it doesn't support PWM, so it's a pain in the butt because you have to do software PWM, which is like basically loop through and decide whether it should be on or off. And then if if it changes state, then you got to like send a new SPY packet. So those weren't ideal anyway. But Elliot brought up a good idea of using basically the chipset that's inside the NeoPixel. Use that to drive the encoder LEDs, and I think that'd be a pretty easy way.
So the WS2811.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. So essentially, we're going to eliminate the serial peripheral interface entirely from the board for those of you who can't get the 595 or who just don't want the hassle. And we're going to try driving those with the WS2811 IC and connect that directly to the RGB LEDs in the encoder and go from there. Should actually give you 2 more pins as well.
And I would imagine pretty easy to program. I've never used that chip, but it's really nice because you just say red and you got it.
Yeah, theoretically,
a lot of libraries.
It should be exactly like running our other NeoPixels on that board.
And we think it's compatible. It's a different chipset inside the NeoPixels from like the bomb I had versus that chipset, but the timing looks pretty close. So we might hedge our bets and also have a non-populated resistor that goes to the Pico. In case it's not compatible, then you just like depopulate the one that goes from the last NeoPixel and populate the resistor that goes to the Pico. So that's just, and then people can ask us what it's for. That's why all the extra resistors are there, not because they're necessary, but because they might be necessary or they might be pickoff points, which is important.
Configuration options.
Well, they really are, especially in the prototype stage. You want as many tie points as you can because you're going to screw up and you don't want to respin the board. You want to run a jumper wire and make it work.
Not a bad idea to put a couple test pads on there or some through holes you can stick a piece of wire in to at least to pick up ground if you have a scope or if you need to hotwire some stuff. It's nice.
Yeah, well, if we go to mine, not all, but a lot of those little brain neuron things are test points.
Perfect.
So yeah, test point, test point, test point. Jesse, I see you've got a screen there. Would you like me to put that up?
Oh, sure. Yeah. This is what we were talking about earlier. This is interactive bomb. So like you can highlight over, and then you can also say like, oh, I've already sourced that and I placed that. And it like pops up everything that, you know, I don't need to show these. These are the board outline stuff. But yeah, so that's kind of really nice. And then you can also, export that to like a CSV or something. Yeah. So, but yeah, so this is kind of a neat thing. It helps you populate and stuff. So
that is indeed cool.
So this is the interactive HTML bomb.
Yep. And it runs off of your layout, not from your schematic. Copy bomb.
All right, I just put that link in the Discord.
So I will share that. Oh, you put it in Discord. Okay. Sorry. I won't share that on the stream then.
I could put that. It's quite easy.
Yeah. And then I will. Is it the same link or 2 different links?
2 different links.
Okay, so I will.
I am getting some of those WS2811 chips, and I am going to. My last output for my NeoPixel actually goes to a test point, so I can test one of those chips and make sure that they're compatible. Looking at the data sheets, they should be, but it's.
Well, the timings were close, but I remember they didn't exactly overlap. according to the data sheet.
There's a fast and a slow, and the fast timing was pretty close, but it wasn't exact. And all those NeoPixel and NeoPixel clones are all a little bit different and a little finicky, I think. But
yeah, we'll find out. I appreciate you doing that. All right, so there is the interactive HTML BOM link, very useful. And there is the action plugins that'll make routing faster for you. So thank you, Elliot and Jesse.
If you guys remember that discussion we had weeks ago about the level shifter and using a sacrificial NeoPixel as a first one, chip seems like it would be even better because it won't accidentally light up. But you could probably do the same thing with it.
Interesting.
You could. More expensive than a NeoPixel, though, I think. Possibly.
It's one less BOM item if you're already using them.
This is true. All right. So this next 2 weeks you're going to have for layout because we've got Thanksgiving. It can be a stressful time of year for people. I want to take a couple days off anyway. My productivity is kind of dropping. So we've got 2 weeks for layout, but you do not want to wait until week 2 to start. Start now. See what troubles you run into. Let us help you get through them. And then we can clean up, work on it a little here, a little there. There are times in the course where I don't really get a good feel for how long things are going to take you, but I am certain this is going to take you more than 3 to 5 hours on your first board. Elliot, do you know how long it took you?
Oh, I don't want to say, but some amount of time. A lot of it was doing battle with software, not really, not knowing what I want to do, but figuring out how to make it do it. I would say if anyone's going to use the SVG2 Shenzhen Inkscape plugin, and it doesn't work right off the bat, there's like at least 3 of us who have gotten through it in Discord. Just ask right away because it's mostly trial and error, and a lot of us have done the error part for you. So.
Did you run into the same thing I did where like the contrast matters? Like I think I used tried to use like a gold or something to mimic what something would look like, and it didn't output that layer like at all. I had to go with like kind of all dark layers.
I didn't have that, but I did have an issue with like self intersections and like loops that all created a billion lines pointing off to like some point in space. And it seemed to improve just going layer by layer. But yeah, I had that. I crashed it like 32 times.
And I think you have to, if you use the circles and squares and text and stuff, I think you have to turn those into paths. Or they will not work.
Basically, you want everything to be a polygon. So if you have a stroke, like a line width you think looks good, there's a button in Inkscape, not a button, menu option, to convert it to a path, which makes it the actual shape. Otherwise it comes through as just a line. And that's like a lot of the more artistic stuff that I don't know how to do with the swoopy shapes and the shading and gradients and cool things. Yeah, those don't translate well.
I think
text is one of them.
I think there's a setting in Inkscape so like it lines up on the centers, not the edges of like, so your stroke width doesn't matter. I don't remember where that setting is, but I think they also support hairline, but maybe that's in an updated version.
Yeah, and you got to watch out when you're snapping, especially after you've converted it to a path, like to make segments hook to each other. It's fun.
Yeah, it takes a bit, and it's worth it. Like you can make some really cool stuff with it. And I guess other things of note that I ran into doing some of mine. Silk will not go if there's no solder mask. They won't do your silk. And like you'll show up in your Gerber files, but they won't make it. So, or they'll just take it away.
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen again. Actually, I'll show you guys something I was working on.
Preview.
If you don't mind.
Preview your Gerber files, or if you use a KiCad and you go through Osh Park, you just upload your KiCad file. Bam, no Gerbers, and you can see a preview right away. It's real nice.
So Nope. We'll find the file here. Yeah, if you want to deal with the silk, so if, say you wanted to put a pattern on your board, here you go. I wanted to put hexagons on mine. You can create a shape and fill it and export it. It's really easy. But you end up with this basically silk screen that covers your entire board. And when you import it to Inkscape, or not Inkscape, but KiCad, it's going to overlap literally everything. So if you had your reference designators on there, if you have some outlines of components, it's going to be on top of the pads. Now, when you generate the Gerber, I think it cuts them out. So it removes silk where the pads are and the through holes are. But it's kind of sloppy. Export your board as an SVG, bring it back to Inkscape, and cut out the places you don't want your fill pattern. It's a pain in the butt, but there's really no good way to say, cover my board with this pattern, but don't overlap these things. So it worked out all right, but it wasn't enjoyable, I would say. But you can see here that the result is a piece that looks like this, which has kind of been masked off where my components are going to be, just to keep it a little cleaner. But yeah, filling spaces is time consuming as well. So if you want to, think about it from the start.
Elliot, you've turned this into a full-time job, buddy.
It's entertaining. Yeah, so it also, if you do complicated patterns, the 3D view is going to take forever to render if you use it in here. The more dense it is, but it does work eventually. So there you go. It's magic.
That is cool looking. But yeah, the 3D component view, you know, once you add the components as well, can also help you find mistakes. You know, sometimes you'll see somewhere you screwed up that you just don't see when you're looking at it in 2D, and then it hits you in the face there. So
same thing as viewing the Gerbers, you find things too, or you'll be like, why does that trace look like that? Or, you know, why does that copper fill look like garbage? Part of that is KiCad's fault, but part of it might be your fault.
And it's also valuable to look at just one layer at a time. Look at your silk layer by itself. You know, see if there's some that are backwards or rotated or whatever. You know, look at the top layer by itself. Make sure that, you know, like when I did my design in the video that I did for you guys, I had some disconnected grounds. I didn't see it, didn't even notice it until I, you know, checked net connectivity. But use those built-in tools, and we'll try to give you some resources online to help you find those. But do everything you can to clean up and get this thing working so that in 2 weeks, when we do our official checks, when we actually walk you through the process, it's that much less stressful for you. Maybe you have to fix 1 or 2 things, but you don't have to rip up your design and lay it all down again.
Here's a question for you.
Sure.
Yeah, so say you want to do fancy art and you don't want to see like R601 and R1301. It's easy to get those off of the board, right? You just turn them off. These are inactive. I guess if anyone wants to know how, something super handy. If you can select your actual footprint like this, there's a property, you just uncheck the reference. It'll unshow it. But also this is super handy. What is that thing called? Edit text and graphic properties. This will, with some filters, select all references. And you can say uncheck visible and hit OK. Make that as a global change. But I was going to ask, what's a good plan on, I mean, obviously not having them is fine if you can reference a picture and keep track of what you're doing. Do you have any strategies for like keeping track of what's what without putting the text on there? I can show you what I did.
You just gotta You just got to use like an assembly drawing is usually what I call it. And that's like a printed out version that has, you know, all the designators on it and the chip bodies and all that stuff.
Okay. Yeah, I mean,
Or
that
you
makes
made
sense.
a code.
I made Braille.
Yeah.
It's small enough to fit under the components. So hopefully this way I don't actually have to reference anything.
Oh, that's
I
fun.
just printed it on the back of the board. I didn't know if that was like a good idea or if there's like an awesome way to do it. I feel like that Inspect AR was meant for this, but
Inspect AR would be great for this. Wow.
I like how you have little triangles on your diodes, so they're hard to put on backwards.
oh yeah, that
Why
was
is pin 3 the marked pin?
They screwed
Yeah.
up, Jesse. Nobody
It makes me so
references
mad.
pin 3. Yeah, man, I'm still mad about that board. I still have to take all those off and rotate them before I
Do you
can
think it
power
was-
that on.
I
It's
did
'cause-
it on Teach Me PCB Rev 1 too. And I still
man.
did it on the second board.
Is it because like the guy making the tool like put the notch on the wrong side and they're like, whatever, we'll just fix the data sheet.
Yeah, I'm sure that's it.
It's like the mold was wrong.
Fixing
No,
a data sheet is, you know, easy. Why didn't they just do it? But maybe there were so many, you know, like so many different versions out there that it just became too hard to keep track of. I don't know.
But my
a
God,
mess.
fix it now. I mean, they're going to make a WS 2813 at some point or a 2812 version D. Fix it.
Yeah, that is brutal.
Yeah.
These things, those little buggers are hard to solder too. I think the ones I have, I've had for a long time, but I made pretty big pads for them. But they, I don't know if they're tarnished or what, but they do not like to.
They're oxidized. Do you have a fiberglass pin?
No, but I'm sure I could get one.
Okay, yeah, they're cheap.
Yeah,
But get yourself a
scrape it
little
off.
fiberglass pin and scuff them up. So solder wets, it will not form the intercrystalline bonds that you need with oxide. Just doesn't happen.
Yep.
So flux cleans things as well as physical abrasives. The other nice thing about physical abrasives is it increases the surface area, so you get greater adhesive forces. The solder wets more readily to rough surfaces than it does to perfectly smooth ones. So yeah, clean and scuffed. Gonna get some great solder going.
Oh,
Are
there's
you
so many
using-
pixels.
Are you using flux?
Yeah,
Okay.
I've got one of those chip click ones. I've got some RA flux that works great, but it also works really great on everything. You don't want it to.
The other
Oh,
issue
man,
that
when you heat flux, that makes like the most nasty fumes. It like even wearing a mask, it goes right through it and makes you cough like really.
Yeah, the RA flux is like straight from the tree. Like it smells like pitch. So it's kind of pleasing. It's like Christmassy,
Okay. I'd
but
rather
yeah,
have that than the stuff I've been breathing in.
but yeah, the other stuff
Acrid.
smells kind of like hot old people. I don't know. It's weird.
hot
Like
old people.
attractive or
No, not in a
warm.
good way. Other kind of hot. Florida hot.
That's funny. Okay, so what about the course? How are you guys feeling about it? What do we need to do differently? Improvements, changes? What do you like?
I have one. I'm going to interrupt. The forums are hard now that they're spread over 6 weeks because it's not obvious where discussions are happening unless you check your email and see the recap.
I felt a similar thing, but I don't know how to fix it. So it would be nice if we had a single forum that you had subjects in.
So yes, yep.
That would be ideal. I don't know how to make that happen software wise.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's a site level one. You wouldn't be able to use it probably as an activity anymore, but might be a fair trade-off if that was possible to make a global one.
I was going to say the same thing too, because sometimes I'll see something and I'll respond to it and I'll be like, okay, let's see if anyone else has responded to me. I don't remember which week it's in, and I don't remember because a lot of the subjects carry over from week to week. So there might be the same thing in multiple weeks, or same at least idea.
I will take a look. I agree. I just don't know how to fix it. So I will take another swing at fixing it.
I think in the last course, was there an overarching like per design program for them, or no? Was it weekly? There was weekly, but I thought there was also just a KiCad one or something like that.
There was. So in the last course, we had something more of a split with who was using what software, right? Eagle was much more popular. KiCad was still extremely popular. DipTrace had 11 people. It has really become a KiCad course at this point.
That's a really good point, actually, because you have the filters set up. So the forum is by default filtered to the group you joined. So that one guy using Easy EDA has probably never seen a forum post the whole time.
He switched out. So they're separate but visible forums. So you can go and you can flip, but
I know you can, but by default it's not.
Yeah. So yeah, I agree. We need a single flipping forum. I'll have to come up with a plan for that. Because every other forum in the world, it's possible. I don't know why Moodle's different there. That's a little frustrating. What about approachability? So we're still getting high marks in the survey responses, 4s and 5s, but even like the 4, what can we do to be more approachable? Because I mean, look at us right now on screen. There's the same 3 people. Usually it's Brian's joining us, but he's traveling right now. How do we? I know Camper Jab's trying to join. He's having technical difficulties. I appreciate it, Kemper. But how do we make it more approachable for people?
I wonder if part of it is there's a delay between the YouTube and what's going on here. So like, it feels like the topic is passed by the time someone's comment goes up. So it might feel like we're ignoring them, but we're not. It's just that it's hard to keep coming back with the delay and stuff and hitting everyone's questions. And there's not much we can do about that, like with StreamYard and YouTube, I think.
How many people are typically watching something like this? There's 3 of us here, like 4 over there.
The current stats right now at this moment in time.
Okay, yeah, so there you go.
We peaked at 4.
I'm going to close the window then, the chat window. That's how I was keeping track.
Yeah. We peaked about 4, but I mean, I don't expect people to stay around for an hour and a half. That's ridiculous. Yeah. But I would like them to feel comfortable coming on screen and asking if they have a question. So
is it maybe because the office hours are more announced in the Discord than on the forum? So we're not getting it seems like there's a lot more Discord discussion, but there's a lot of questions in the forum. And it feels like, because I don't go in the forums actively and some other people don't, it feels kind of like the forum doesn't get as quick responses, and they might not know about the office hours weekly as much. So maybe they don't ask there. I'm not sure. Driving engagement is a question that everyone has, and I don't think people have good responses or answers to.
I think on like the first or second week, I said, I don't know where the calendar is. And just the way that the course is laid out, like it's not in your face. Like what's happening soon doesn't slap you. And I feel like you kind of need that to happen. Like however you do it, like it should be like, here's what's happening today, right now, right shouting at you. Because it's easy to, I know I see it here on the left, upcoming events. I've got a calendar. If I drill down to site pages, but yeah, make it front and center. I think it'll be easier to notice or harder to ignore.
When you say front and center, the calendar, like my options.
Yeah, I don't know what your options are, but
So my options are left side, right side, and then do I want it, top, middle, bottom?
Right. If there were a banner that said office hours are today at 6 or tomorrow at something on every page or like the landing pages. You know what I'm saying? Not trying to be critical of it, but that's how I would
No.
get.
Critical's
Yeah.
fine. No, it's my face is trying to figure out how to make it happen. I'm not grumpy facing like that's a horrible idea. I suck. It's not that. I'm thinking like, how do I enact that advice?
Yeah, and I don't know what's possible in like the constraints of Moodle.
Yeah. Okay. I'll take a look. And then the other thing too is, are these good dates and times? I don't know. We should have results on the, what days are you available to work on a thing. Like I said, I don't expect anybody to hang out here for as long as we've been here. We're approaching the 90-minute mark from, the course rundown. But if they do have a question, I want them to feel free to jump in for 10 minutes, at some point. So, okay. So make the calendar more front and center if possible. Confuse the forums if possible. Okay. I can give that a shot. So, all right. Anything else for the good of the cause?
What were the topics we were going to discuss? The
Parts.
video.
We did the
Parts.
video.
And what was the last one besides what we're talking about now? Was there something else?
I think it was we were going to talk about this week's layout, which we did. So I think we covered them, man. I think we're good.
Good job.
Okay.
Go team.
Oh, for anybody that hasn't, the KiCad files have been updated. Pulled the new ones. The old ones didn't have all the files because my schematic symbols are spread across a couple of things. And we'll probably run into the same thing with the footprints. So we'll see when people start getting into that. If I'm missing some things, I don't think I am, but yeah, well, you never know until you have to use it, I suppose. And I've already finished.
Okay, I've got a question for you. Not for this course, but this whole idea of the surface charge theory. Is that anything you guys would be interested in learning more about, either in video or written form?
Yeah, I'd like to deeper dive into. Are you going to relate it to the video?
I am burning out. I know it. I'm spending more time and getting less done. So the first thing I'm going to do is just step away from everything for a couple of days over the holiday. Just relax, chill, clean up my office some. Just kind of get in a better headspace because I've been grinding too much, and it catches up with you. I know it does. But I was thinking maybe not for this course, but after the course, when I get back into content creation, as something that might be interesting.
I would say if you related it back to some decision we might make ever in our human lives, that would make it easier for me to understand or relate to. It was to be something you stick with when it's like, oh, this is why that keeps happening, or oh, I should do this instead of that, because that's what would really help.
It really is incredibly applicable to high-speed layouts. So what's happening right now? One of the reasons that we have a chip shortage is because the
Oh, and you don't have to do it now. I was just saying.
No.
If you're gonna put effort into it.
I will. But here's the thing. Okay, here's why we care about all this high-speed design stuff. You've heard of Moore's law, right? Every 2 years, we can double the number of transistors in a given square millimeter type thing. So the chip fabricators keep making things smaller and smaller and smaller. They go through these things called die shrinks. So like automotive qualified stuff, the chips that, everybody wants to, make the Tesla and the Ford, whatever it is. Let's say they're built on the 19 millimeter node or 19 nanometer node. Well, right now we're on like the 3 nanometer node. So the parts just keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And as they do, the rise times get higher and higher and higher. So it's conceivable that a board that you lay out today with the parts that are available today and the packages that are available today, 10 years from now, you go to make that same board, and some of those packages, they're the same size package, but the IC die inside is much, much smaller. It's got a higher rise time, and now your product doesn't work. I say it's possible because it's happened. It's happened to people who have kept the same board design, same parts, or so they think, but it's got smaller dies in there, higher rise times, and now they've got signal integrity issues that they didn't have before. Is that something that's going to happen over my design lifetime? Probably not, because I'm down to making like a board a year, and it's something like this. It doesn't matter. Is it something Jesse might have to worry about? Absolutely. The new people coming out of college, absolutely. So that's why we want to start getting you guys to think about fields, not just designing for connectivity, but what's happening in those energy spaces around the traces. And that surface charge theory is one of those things that can help you to do it. That's why I find that kind of stuff so fascinating. So
I will say, in terms of changing packaging and stuff, at my last job, they changed bonding wires, and that made one of our designs not work. Because it made, I think, if I recall, it made something leaky. It made I think it was one of the Zeners, started leaking more than it used to, and it caused something to turn on at hot. And so, yeah, things that happen inside your package that you may not think affects you at all may affect you.
So that's why I think this stuff is all fascinating. It's just one of those things. What all do you need to know? Like, I had an electrician come out to my house to pull some wires that some joker put in uninsulated 220-volt wires that they ran to a spa. They just ran wire strands out there. It was nuts. So I asked him, what do you understand about electricity? And he, was telling me this mental model that he made in his head about clean power and dirty power. And sometimes, they don't mix. And it was absolutely fascinating. He obviously knew what he was doing, right? He could hook up the whole house, no issues, and do a fantastic job, but no fundamental understanding about what was going on inside. But it didn't matter. He could still get the job done.
It's my kind of guy.
So how far down these rabbit holes do we really want to go? That's the question. Is it something that people would find valuable and invest time in? That's my question.
Yeah, one thing that helps me is not knowing everything, but at least being able to recognize when I need to know something. Like that, I know that this is going to be tricky because it's a high frequency something or other, or it's HDMI, and I know that those signals or whatever. Just having clues of when you need to go do research is what's really helpful, rather than needing to retain all that knowledge all the time. Just getting that impression of all right, well, this is something that matters. This is something that you can put any component in and it will be fine. Getting that kind of thing is useful.
Yeah, and you are doing a fantastic job, Elliot. Just absolutely superb.
Well, thanks.
All right. So Camper has a few things in the private chats. Have they made the change to X-ray lithography yet? That's a great question. I don't know the answer to. But yeah, down at these levels, you can't do it optically anymore. You have to move up to UV, and then you have to move up past that into the RF frequencies. But I don't really follow that stuff, so I don't really know. It would be interesting to know. I would love to know if you find out. And ask the audiophiles about copper's musicality. Oh boy, man, you can have some fun with audiophiles. Have you seen the gold-plated plugs? Like the AC for the AC outlets, and they charge like $500 for them. It's nuts. So, all right.
Sorry, those are my comments. There is a new applied science video today, and it has a fantastic circuit board.
Do you have a link? We'll share it.
Geez, no. Yes, hang on.
Dude, you can't leave us hanging like that. And then we should, I mean, I'm fine staying on, but I want to be respectful of your guys' time. Do you want to talk? Do you want to hang out? Do you want to go?
I probably have to head out for the night.
I think we should go. Let's be
Okay.
reasonable. And
Let's be
here's the link.
Let me pull that up. I really appreciate both of your time more than you guys know. This is too much work for one person. And you've both been absolutely invaluable.
You got it.
So thank
Thanks
you
for all
so
the work
much.
you're putting in.
It's too much. But here's what we want to do. Okay. Here's the here's what I want. I'm gonna go full screen for a minute here. Solo layout. There we go. And then can I have you guys at the bottom? No, I can't. How about this? Okay, there we go. So I want this to be the first course of many. Right now we're learning how to do rigid PCBs, and we're doing a decent job, but it is a design for connectivity product. We did this because we want you to be successful, and there are lots of potential gotchas if we want a high-speed design. Now, who knows if we could even get chips for a high-speed design right now? It's a crazy life. But I want to go further. Like, let's say we do a rigid flex or a semi-flex board. We could do something like this, right? Hook up our Pico, little clamshell, folds in half. It's a little game controller. And you can kind of make out that there's a flexible inside there. Can you guys see that or no?
Yep. Yeah.
That little hunk of brown. So we could still do a Pico because we have parts. We can get parts for it, but we can switch over to a more advanced layout, add things like a Bluetooth module. That's something where I think I shared in the Discord. I've added Bluetooth BLE to stuff before. It's difficult, but it's not hard, especially when you're using it as a network processor. You just send a UART stream out to it and off you go. But I'd like to come up with some rigid flex ideas. It doesn't have to be this. This, might be a little too close to the project we're doing now. I'd like to come up with some high-speed design so we can really get into the nitty-gritty. I geek out on that stuff. Think about that. And if you come up with some ideas, let me know, and we'll see what we can do to make it happen. I don't expect people to pay for a rigid flex board. We would find a way to get the sponsors to cover that for you. But that's the goal. I would like this course to continue. So, all right. Well, with that, I would like to thank Advanced Assembly Royal Circuit Solutions, Lockwe, theanalog.io, the best newsletter you should be reading. We've got DigiKey, Osh Park, and I think that's all. So thank you all the sponsors who help make this possible. And thank you for all the participants who are spending your time on hopefully something you find valuable. I hope that this is the beginning of a life skill that will change the course of the trajectory of your career or your hobbies. You're learning how to do something not a lot of people know how to do, but you're doing it. So thanks for hanging in. And Elliot and Jesse, any final words?
Nope.
Nope.
Well said. All right, guys. Thanks
All right.
so much.
Yep.
Yeah.